Hey, Dr. Roshanda, how are you doing?
Oh, I'm doing well. I'm so excited.
I'm excited. Like, oh my gosh, I've been looking forward to this for so long. And just to give people the backstory on this, so we met through Clubhouse. If you don't know about Clubhouse, it's an amazing app on
Yes.
through the Apple iPhone, and just being in the
Mm-hmm.
rooms. And I started hopping in the room. She was hopping in my room, and just her personality, our personalities just clicked. And I was like, man, I would love to bring her on just because she just has a wealth of knowledge. She's so energetic. And then she was on judging our pitches with the Marketing Business Academy, which I was nervous, and she critiqued me, but it was good critiquing and good constructive criticism. I'm so appreciative of her. And just since then, we continue to stay in touch, and just a warm spirit. And she's an island girl, you guys. So we're going to get into that. This is going to be one of those episodes. It's going to be a girlfriend episode. So
For
just
sure.
so with that being said, I want to welcome everyone in. If you don't know me, hi, my name is Camille Essick, and I'm the host of the Speaker Podcast. And tonight my guest is, we call her Dr. Roshanda Pratt is in the building. So thank you, Doc. Thank you for joining me, Dr. Ro.
I am so excited to be here. Camille, this is going to be so good. We're going to have a good time. My motto is, if we're not having fun doing it, then why are we doing it? So we're going to have a good time. And I'm looking forward to this conversation. And, I have appropriately stalked you. Notice I said appropriate, ladies and gentlemen. I've stalked her appropriately. And I love the stuff that you are doing. And it was an honor that you asked me to be a part of this discussion today.
Oh, wow. Thank you so much. And those that are not familiar with you, just cue everyone in. Just give them a little background so they can be more familiar with who you are.
Sure. So I've been a television news producer since the 4th grade. My mom and dad are from the beautiful country of Trinidad and Tobago. So in the 4th grade, when my friends were watching cartoons, my dad told me as an American citizen, it was my responsibility and duty to know what's going on in my country and my community. So I grew up watching Tom Brokaw and Peter Jennings, fell in love with television news, to be that person on the front lines of giving people information. Some would call it nosy. I call it curiosity. There's a difference. And so for 20 years, I worked behind the scenes as a television news producer, executive morning show producer, and on-air talent. And I decided to bet on myself, left my television news job 2 years ago. I can't believe it's just been 2 years, 2 years ago. Totally. And now as a first lady of visibility, because you deserve to be seen, heard, and paid, I help influential women create and leverage their visibility with live video and local media.
I love it. I love it. I love it. And speaking of some of your influences, I grew up on Peter Jennings, Tom Brokaw, amazing. Dan Rather, another OG.
Oh, yes.
And I yes. Ed Bradley. I love Ed Bradley, watching him growing up, Ed Bradley. And I fell in love. Like, I love it. In my mind, she's like my auntie. Gail King. I think she is so amazing. I call her Auntie Gail. I love Miss Gail. I think she's just amazing. She's so smart, no nonsense, and she does not come to play.
She knows how to conduct an interview. And the thing about it is, growing up back then, and the people that the OGs you mentioned, notice we really didn't have a lot of women.
Right.
So when women came on the scene, I grew up with Connie Chung, Barbara Walters, and then eventually Oprah. Right. And so those ladies really helped to pave the way and open the door for women like us to do what we're doing right now with media. This is amazing.
Yeah, it is amazing. And you as well, like, you've done some amazing things working with the CBS Corporation. So thank you, because, dropped my phone. We're live. Things happen when you're live.
Yeah.
Get that.
This is real life. You may see my 3-year-old wander here in the background.
It happens.
It happens.
So with that being said, we're just going to hop into everything. You mentioned being a first generation American here, coming from Trinidad. What was that like from you transitioning or just being in that environment? Because we've heard so many things about DACA and immigration with the administration, and how it was such a derogatory term, the way it was used when immigrants built this country. And I always say there are immigrants that were voluntary and involuntary, if you know what I mean. Mm-hmm. And so what was that like for you being a child with that background, being an island girl? What was that like?
It was very interesting because my mom and dad, my sister, all of my family are West Indian, and I'm the Yankee Doodle of the family. In fact, my cousins are listening to this. They used to pick on me and call me the Yankee Doodle. And I would always have to prove to them. I was like, no, I'm really West Indian. They're like, no, only at 10%. And I'm like, no, I am fully. So it was always interesting because one of the things, if you ever grow up in a Caribbean household, their traditions and how they see things is so much different than your American friends. And what people don't realize, especially growing up in a Caribbean household, is things are different. You do things different. But also you still deal with racism and discrimination. So I think about certain times, my dad was a welder, so we always moved where the business was. But I remember certain states that we lived in, when my mom would open her mouth to speak, whether it's at school, kids or even teachers will make comments like, what is she saying? Where is she from? She talks funny. She talks strange. It's only, Camille, like real talk, within these last couple of years that being from another Caribbean country is exotic and sexy. Before it was like not looked at that way, right? Mm-hmm. And so I grew up in this dichotomy of dealing with racism in both extremes, being Black in America, but also being Black immigrant or Black Caribbean in America. And that was a really interesting dichotomy. So a lot of times when we talk about the race issue, we focus on the fact of African-American experience, being Black in America, but also think about that experience as it pertains to the Caribbean culture. And I think it really came into focus for me when about 2 or 3 years ago, I was working on a project with the W.K. Kellogg Foundation. They do a national campaign called National Day of Racial Healing, where they encourage people around Dr. King's birthday to sit down and have those tough conversations about race. And they had hired me on to do the marketing component. I was working with them to do the video component and the video campaign for this event. And I told my American story, my story of dealing with racism, and from a Caribbean perspective, not just from being a Black woman, but being a Black woman who has Caribbean roots. And that story, Camille, resonated with so many people that to the point that when Kellogg put that out, we were just putting it out to show people this is how you tell your story, but it took off in the Caribbean culture. Caribbean communities on Facebook started sharing my video and saying, finally, someone is sharing our story and our experience. And then it opened up an opportunity for me to speak on one of the #1 Caribbean radio stations in New York City about my experience. So that's a whole lesson in visibility is power, right? But it's also a lesson that even in our African-American experience, we have to also remember this diaspora, and it's a continuing dialogue between merging the Caribbean experience with the Black American experience, because the two aren't separated. I mean, when I go back into my Trinidadian history, many of the slaves that came over from the Caribbean, yes. Right? Many of the foods that I grew up eating, like saltfish and dumplings and plantains and all that stuff like that. Listen, that was food the slaves planted and harvested, right? It was considered poor food, but I love it, right? So it's understanding that the connection of both of those worlds, and it's so very important to our experience as a whole.
I love that too. You brought out a really good point about the contribution that the islands made to American culture. When we think of the spices, right? You have the sugar,
right,
cocoa, and turmeric and all these other things that we use, and it came from the islands, you know.
That's it.
And even the histories, when we hear about even the hard things, we hear about the triangular roots from Africa, but the islands was like the first stop, and upworking farms, what men went through in the Caribbean, and that scar that's still there in that area. And it's just so many things I feel like people don't acknowledge as far as what the those nations brought to American culture.
For sure.
Music, you know, a lot of the sounds that we hear in today's music, it came from the islands.
For sure.
It needs to be acknowledged.
Yeah, I love that, because I think what happens, we always talk about knowing our history so we can understand our present. But I think too many times in telling the history, we have separated the Caribbean experience from the Black experience, and the two are merged together. When we think about Afro beats, soca, calypso music, all of that has its influence in what we're doing. I mean, when you think about rap music, it's storytelling, right? maybe not some of the current music, but okay, let me not go there. But it's storytelling. But if you go back to the Caribbean and you look at calypso music, it's storytelling. It's woven through that. You know, Negro spirituals, it was storytelling. And many of them were talking about the escape route, right? In order to get to freedom. So all of these things are connected, but we have been so disconnected, I think, as a culture, that we don't study about the Caribbean culture that's very much a part of our African American experience.
I totally agree. And going through those different experiences, I know we have ups and downs. And one of the main reasons why I started this podcast is because with entrepreneurs, social media is always showing like the highlights, the best parts,
right?
What I call snapshots, but we have these lows. And it's always put your best face forward, put your best foot forward, and to look like, oh, I'm going viral or trying to go viral and get followers. But we have times, particularly as creatives, where we deal with hard moments. Some people deal with depression, anxiety. Maybe we talk about in Clubhouse all the time, imposter syndrome. We have all these different things that people don't see when you're pushing and going hard, then you don't have the support, you feel you get or even deserve. And it gets frustrating, you get tired. So going through these things, whether it's through childhood, you have traumas and things that happen that you don't tell anybody, but then you still have to go forward and just look like, oh man, I've made it, I excelled. But then you have this other narrative that we're playing against in the back of our mind, because I think a lot of women, particularly women of color, statistically, we've gone through a lot of, when you look at the gamut of Black women, many Black women have been raped, molested, abused, domestic violence, all of these things, but yet we're still statistically the most educated demographic in this country. We're have a higher propensity to open our own businesses. A lot of us, I don't have children, but wives, mothers, we're wearing all of these hats.
Yeah.
And it gets tired. And then we're dealing with racism, sexism, then within our own community, colorism, the light versus dark. We have all these things going on.
Yeah.
So with you, Roshanda, how did you deal with some of these hard points in your life to get to where you are and not to be a statistic or a product of your environment?
Well, I realized, number one, very early on, and it's my mother and father who put this in me, that I'm standing on the shoulders of those that come before me. Whenever I produce a book or write a book, I think most recently when I wrote my recent book, Visibility is Power, which is dedicated to my grandmothers. I thought about them, and I often think, and scripture talks about this, right? I'm a Jesus girl, so you're going to hear this, right? So scripture talks about that every third and fourth generation, God is looking for a David. He's looking for a righteous branch to redeem the bloodline. And I often think, there's a saying, it's been on a t-shirt. I love it. And it says, I'm my ancestors' wildest dreams. And I often think the things that you and I are doing, Camille, a podcast, who in your family wish they could have told their story? Like, who is that? I think about this book, and I think about all the time, every time I pick it up, I keep it on my desk. I think about, man, which one of my grandmothers would have loved an opportunity to write their story? Like, this is my idea, right? But whose vision was this? That they never got a chance to see it. I mean, think about Dr. King. Dr. King stood there, gave a speech that says, I have a dream, but he never got a chance to see it, right? And so that's what fuels me and drives me, that I'm standing on the shoulders of someone else who didn't get an opportunity to do this. That's what keeps me going. And then the second thing I often say, especially when it comes to social media, right? I mean, Camille, these mom streets, it can be savage, right? I mean, the perfect family, right? The perfect family, the kids are Ivy League, the kids already on the way to Harvard and they're only in the 4th grade, potty training, what time, when do they start it? And if your kid's is not done by 18 months and they're too late, all of these pressures, society, the world, and we put on ourselves. But I realized that I cannot judge my unfiltered life by someone else's filter. It's very easy to snap a picture and swipe and put a filter on it, right? But here I am judging my unfiltered stuff by someone who snapped a picture and put a filter on it. So I have to be careful that I'm not getting into comparison, and be careful that I'm protecting my space, my heart, my mental, that I'm not trying to judge myself by someone else's benchmarks and what they're doing. And then the third thing, you know, is something that my husband and I recently, within the last year, maybe 2 years, come to realize is a lot of times we're trying to live up to this blueprint standard, right? The word of God is a standard. When we look at other people, we can say, you know what? I love how Camille does her podcast. And you can look at that and say, I admire her. I would like to do something like that. But we try to live in the same shoe as somebody else, the same style and flavor, when really all along, my friend, you are the blueprint. Think about that. You're trying to live someone else's blueprint, but you are the blueprint. And that's one thing my husband and I had to realize, because our marriage is very different in the sense of ministry, entrepreneurship. We have 3 children, all the things. I'm a personality, all of those things, I'm managing all of those things. And we had to realize that we have to do things a little bit different because we don't have the same blueprint as, quote, the typical ministry family. It's not the same blueprint. And we were killing ourselves and yelling at each other because we're trying to fit in this mold that didn't work for us. I dare you, my friend, to squash the mold this year and just decide, God, what is it that you want me to do, and go be that.
I love that. You made a really good point. And it's saying and going to be that taps into purpose and the power of purpose. Once you find your purpose and your voice and you know why you're here and you know the assignment, it is so powerful, because one of the biggest dangers in life is not knowing who you are, not knowing what your gifts are, not knowing what your talent is, not knowing what your assignment is, because you'll spend so much energy over here, over there, gassing yourself out, spinning wheels, spending money, because you know your purpose. So can you kind of touch on, Dr. Rowe, the power of purpose, and how does a person find that?
I think purpose is, you know, a word that's been thrown around so much, right? You know, it's kind of like rhetoric, pandemic. You know, people use the word purpose a lot, right? And really are not clearly defining what that is. I think purpose begins with the person who created you. I'm reading a book right now called Born for Significance, because honestly, Camille, you and everyone who's listening and watching this, you are born for significance. God is not creating junk, ladies and gentlemen. You have a purpose. Everything under the sun has a purpose, has a reason that it's here. And so if you're talking about discovering your purpose, it starts with discovering Him. And that means if you have a BMW, I'm not taking my BMW to the Chrysler dealership, right? Because they're not the ones that created it and they don't know anything about a BMW, but I'm going to take the car back to its manufacturer. I'm telling you, this is blessing me, and I'm trying my best to hold it together because it's my first time here and I want to be invited back.
No, that's why I brought you here. Come on.
But I'm just like,
we're waiting for it. Come on.
This is so good. Like, you have to understand, you operating in your purpose cannot really survive outside of the person who created you. You can read all the books you want to, been there, done that. You can do all the classes, all the courses, but it really starts back with asking God this question. You know, God loves it when we ask Him questions. There's a difference in asking questions and questioning God. And I believe when we ask Him the right questions, you'll get the right answer. And it start asking, like, Lord, what did you see from the beginning for my life? Because God doesn't see us in part. We see our lives in part, Camille, but He's Alpha and the Omega, beginning and the end. So He sees your part in the one big story. He sees all of you at once. And so it's going back, asking that question of like, God, what do you see? Even if you don't see it. Man, I'm telling you, I was the Roshanda Live, Camille, when we were living in Bishopville, South Carolina, where the median income was $13,000 to $15,000 a year. And I had overgrown.
Wait, that was the median?
That's the median income. Oh. It is considered, well, our church is in a community that's considered one of the poorest in South Carolina. Wow. Bishopville, South Carolina, Lee County. And God was speaking to me about the Roshanda Live, right? But everything around me didn't show the Roshanda Live. So where we going to put a studio? And where am I going? But He was speaking to me then about it in an environment that did not, you ready for this? Did not show what He was saying. Let me give you an example of that. He created an environment, the world, out of nothing. Do you understand that? So if you feel like you don't have anything, you're in a good position for God to create something, because he created the world out of nothing and made it into something. And so while I was there, God was speaking to me about the Roshanda Live. But I believe when he was talking to me about the Roshanda Live, before anyone knew I was the Roshanda Live, God was talking to me about Paris, France, where I had my first international speaking engagement. He was talking about my Amazon bookseller. He saw all of those things while I was washing my dishes in a community that was rural, looking at my overgrown grass in my backyard. He was speaking to me about purpose and my destiny. See, God is speaking. It's, are you listening? Because he's speaking. So if you want to know your purpose, I believe it starts with just going back to the manufacturer. Got to take my car back to the place that knows how it operates. That'll change your life.
I love it. And you touched on something. You were talking, and I thought about when you said when you were in Lee County, and nothing was there.
Nothing.
How do you survive, or how do you get through? Because I think a lot of people get frustrated when they've asked and God has shown it to them, but their current situation does not reflect what he said. God, you showed me this.
Yeah.
God, I prayed this and you gave me this. You spoke to my heart and gave me this word, or this person prophesied over my life, or whatever. But my current situation is actually in reverse.
Yeah.
So if someone hold on to the vision of what they saw, because in the flesh you get mad at God, right?
Sure.
And you get frustrated, like, God, you lied to me. So how does someone survive how do you survive the in-between before manifestation?
Oh, this is such a good question. It's two things. Number one, you have to keep the vision before you. See, I practice, you know how you had me do my introduction at the beginning and tell my quick story? I practiced that then. I mean, it's morphed over the years, right? But when no one knew the Roshanda Live, I would practice in videos. I would record videos back then because live streaming wasn't a thing. I would practice in my mirror because I knew that I could not get ready. I had to stay ready. So I kept the vision before me. I hid it in my heart. I made sure that even the things that God was speaking to me, that I was sharing it with people who would encourage and celebrate me. Some of you guys got a lot of haters in your circle. And I just don't understand that because, Camille, I can honestly tell you the people in my circle are not haters. Let me tell you who the people are in my circle. The people in my circle are like, if I tell them an idea, here's what they're saying. How much money you need? Okay, when we going to get started with doing this? Oh my gosh, it's amazing. No, I was just sharing a thought. I'm not saying we could do this by next week. No, wait a second. That's the kind of people that I have in my circle. So I don't understand having your haters around you and keeping your enemies closer. That's a waste of energy. So I don't even understand that, but it's keeping the vision before you, constantly looking at it. You know, there's a reason why scripture says, write the vision and make it plain, so those that see it can run with it. So it's putting and keeping the vision before you. And then it's taking little steps towards what you're doing. I think about before I left my job, those last 2 years when I really decided that this was it, Camille. I decided that, you know what? I'm going to bet on myself. And there was a particular situation that happened that really led to, okay, deuces, I'm out of here. But I remember those last 2 years going to the TV station. I showed up every day dressed like I was going on air every single day. And there's a couple of people who whispered about it, like, why is she coming here? You look like you dolls up ready for air. It's like, you never know. Because I wasn't, you heard the saying, I'm not dressing I want to dress from where I'm going, right?
Success.
Exactly. And so I showed up every day. And wouldn't you know it, that particular morning, I will never forget this. I got up and I had this fuchsia jacket. And I heard the Holy Spirit tell me, he says, wear that jacket today. And I said, well, what else you want me to wear since you're dressing me? And I put on this jacket. I came into work and one of my coworkers says, girl, you look so good today. I said, thanks. We had breaking news. I-26 malfunction junction here in Columbia. Some guy held himself up in the car, shut down the interstate, which is a major interstate here in Columbia, South Carolina, right? And we were doing wall-to-wall coverage. And we were getting ready to do the noon show. And my boss at the time came up to me and said, hey, I'd like you to do a traffic report during the noon show. And I said, I'm ready. I was ready to go, Camille. I said, let's do it. The show ended. Our main anchor had not come in yet. We wanted to continue our wall-to-wall coverage. So she said, I want to put you on Facebook Live. Now, listen, I was already doing the Rose Show Live at this point. I was already, practicing the vision. So she says, I want to put you on Facebook Live, and I want you just to talk to people about what's happening, do the traffic cameras, all this stuff. I was live on Facebook for an hour. Wow. One of the main anchors called the station, said, man, Rose doing a good job. My boss goes to one of my friends and says, could Ro do another hour? I mean, am I making a bad mistake by putting her on Facebook Live? And this is what my friend says. Do you not know what she does outside of here? She has a whole Facebook Live show. She knows how to ad-lib. See, live video prepared me for that moment. And we did a great job. I'm saying all that to say, see, the vision that I kept before my eyes prepared me for that moment. God doesn't see in part. He sees the whole picture. Spoke to me about it. It's my job to contend and fight over it. It's my job to put feet into what he said. It's my job to protect it. And it's my job to take little steps towards what he said. That's how you fight for it.
Wow. You said a mouthful. You said it's our responsibility to fight and contend for it.
That's it. You make war over your prophecies. You got to understand that when a prophetic word comes, encouragement, exhortation, when a prophecy comes forth, you have to understand that the enemy is going to fight you off of what was said. So you have to make warfare over that prophecy. So what does that mean? You're writing it down. You're making declarations over what was said. You're asking God, what's the strategy for what you said? Many of us get prophetic words all the time. I mean, you can go in the clubhouse and get a prophecy. Right?
Look,
right
now.
Exactly. Some of them, never mind. I said too much. Let me not go there. Right? We won't go there. But what I want to say is this, that if you believe that you've gotten a word from the Lord and it's been confirmed in your spirit, then you have to do your due diligence to being a mom and having children, to guard the baby and guard the word. So that means that you got to make warfare over it. And many of us receive prophetic words, but don't ask God the instruction over the prophecy that was spoken. You know, prophecy doesn't happen in a week. Depending on the prophet, he may say a particular time frame, but you got to war over that and contend over that word, because the enemy still comes for the word's sake.
Wow, I love it. You have said so much, Dr. Rowe, and when we talk about purpose, because, you know, we talk about this in Clubhouse all the time,
right?
Within brand strategy, and a lot of people don't understand you can couple spirituality with entrepreneurship. I don't see how people do it without it.
Right.
And the worlds that we come from, it's necessary. It's imperative that you walk in purpose, that you walk in faith as you pursue entrepreneurship. So with that being said, you've done so many things, so many projects. You've written this book. You are the first lady of visibility. Kind of break that down. Like, what is visibility? What does that mean? And how did it tie into this amazing book that you've written?
So visibility, you know, in its definition mean, you know, to be seen, right? And when I think about visibility, I think about first that visibility is an inside job. It really starts with how you see yourself. Things like email marketing, live stream, podcasting, those are the exercise of visibility. But to really be visible to you, Camille, I had to first be visible to myself. Camille, hear me. It is something else to be hidden to yourself. You know, entrepreneurs haven't really shown up for themselves. Like, they have a facade, they have their ego, all of those things, but they haven't really shown up for themselves. And so this mantra that I have, that visibility is power, there's something powerful when you discover you. The greatest breakthroughs that have happened in my life is when I discovered that there's a me that I haven't met yet. And I've met her and I like her, right? I have permission to shine because God said, go be the city that's set on the hill. He gave me permission. And so in our book, Visibility is Power, Discovering the Power of Being Seen and Heard, we talk about my journey of visibility. We give you some exercises at the end of the chapters. We also share 7 case studies of people who have tapped into visibility as power, their VIP stories. And then I'm really excited because my husband wrote a bonus chapter called The Hope of Visibility, and being hopeful while you're being visible of what you believe in God to do for your life. And so we're really excited. You can get the book right now at any major book retailer. You can pick it up on Amazon as an ebook or paperback. Dr. Cheryl Wood, many of you guys are familiar. She wrote the foreword for this book and supports it. And we're really excited because people have to understand you can no longer be a hidden figure. I know we have had a movie and it was a great storyline, but there are people who have been hiding from themselves. There are people who've been playing Camille, the background singer, when they knew they should have been on the main stage. Let me say something else. There's a lot of people who have been waiting for a call to get on the main stage when God was telling you, well, if they're not going to call you, go build the stage yourself. And there's so many platforms, live video, Clubhouse, podcasting, that will give you the opportunity to build your own platform. But in order to do that, you have to understand your visibility is an inside job. It starts here and it flows out. So visibility starts with you, how you see yourself.
I love it. I always say we're like packages. And I think a lot of people get so caught up in the content, the buttons and the bows, but you have to take the top off. You need to take out the bubble wrap. You need to take out the tissue paper and start exploring on the inside. Not the exterior, but what about the content? What about the treasure inside of you? What about the gifts that reside within you? We talk about where the money resides, but what about where the gift resides? Because as you said, as far as we begin to explore our own visibility, there's so many things you might not even know that you know how to do, but how do you know if you don't take the time to explore it? If you'd have told me a year and a half ago, I would have been doing this, I would have been like, yeah, right. Because people know me. I'm naturally an introvert unless I just know you and I couldn't like that. But otherwise, I'm a natural introvert. I didn't talk like, I might post pictures, but to do this, stretch. But how would I have known I could do this? I write my own content. I produce my own podcast. I publish my own podcast. I edit my own podcast. I do all my graphic work myself. I did my website. But how would I have known I could do these things if God, and then when I started to do it, I started praying like, God, bless my intelligence to know how to do this because I don't have a tech background.
Yeah.
Show me and give me the resources. I started this podcast with no money. So to say you don't have the money or the resources, how do you know? At some time, if he just wants to see if you're willing to get out of the boat, and as things go along, he'll bless you with the resources of the people to assist you along the way. And in that, meeting you, Mark, Whitney, Jalen, other people that have blessed me with information and knowledge. But how do we know if we don't even get out of the boat?
That's so good. I love that you talked about getting out the boat, because one of my favorite stories of God being a partner in your business is Luke chapter 5, when he was on the shoreline and there were people who were pressing in who wanted to hear what Jesus had to say. And, I'm going to give you the 2021 version. He was looking around like, this is too many people. I can't talk to them. So he talked to Simon Peter and he said, hey, let me get in your boat and push out. And I love this story because he used the water to amplify his voice. So Jesus, as a side note, is into media because he used the water as a microphone so he could speak to the shoreline. But here's the story. Here's the part I want to make about Jesus being in your business. If you let Jesus into your boat, your business being the boat, right? The vehicle to get you to one place to the other, your business. If you let Jesus in the boat, in that story in Luke chapter 5, after Simon Peter let Jesus use his boat for ministry, so your business is a ministry, Jesus then turned to him and said, hey, Simon, let down your net. Simon Peter was like, listen, we've been doing this all night, sir, and we caught nothing. And I don't know what He said, no, let it down. And he told him exactly where to drop the net. And what does the story say? That he caught so many fish, his net began to break and he had to call his business partner over there to get the fish. So here's the point to you, business owner. If you let Jesus into your business, he'll show you where to catch your clients. Come on, I'm telling you, if you let Jesus into your boat, he will show you where the clients are. And I'm telling you, it'll be so much, you'll have to get a business partner. So ask Jesus where to drop your net. He'll show you exactly where to do it.
Yeah, I love that. And also too, you're not for everybody.
That's it.
You try to market to grandma and auntie and cousin and best friend, but I think we have to realize there's over 7 billion people in this world, and the people within your close proximity may not be your client. Your client may be in London. Your client may be in
That's
California.
part.
Your client may be in Lee County, South Carolina.
That part. I love that you brought that up too, Camille, because that goes back to the visibility is power, that your visibility is not determined on a zip code or area code. Mm-hmm. Like in this world with all the technology you have, you could go international while still being in South Carolina.
Yeah.
So you don't have to just market to the people who are around you. Expand your reach.
I love it. And you know, when you're driving, when you brought up the term vehicle several times, and you know, when you're driving like a sports car, it's low to the ground and you have low visibility, right? But then when you get into a sedan, you're sitting up a little bit higher, so then your peripheral kind of spreads a little bit.
So good.
You so see where I'm going with this?
Yes.
So then when you get up into an SUV for the first time and you're like, oh, I didn't realize I could see, you know, and by the time you get into an 18-wheeler, you can see out even further. And then you get into an airplane.
Elevation. I love that. Now, listen, Camille, I'm going to use that analogy. I'm going to give you credit the first 2 times. But by the time...
Just 2 times.
Okay, 3, because I really like you. So the first 3 times I use that is yours. After that, I'm taking full advantage of it. That's really great. And I mean, I think it goes back to your view. Like, what view do you want?
Yeah,
right?
And your position, because you could have been in the lowrider, but you could have been in the 18-wheeler or in the plane.
That's it. I think that's so good. So it goes back to, what is it that you want? Right? What is it that you want? And I often tell people, the sky is not the limit. Come on, we got a whole solar system.
Yes.
I know that's nice to say the sky's the limit, but it's not. We have a whole solar system. We have the heavens. So why just reach for the stars? Why just reach for the skies? Why can't I reach for, you know, Jupiter, Pluto? Pluto's a planet now, right? I know there was going back and forth about that.
So I'm old school. It was a planet.
Same here.
So it's a planet.
Exactly. I think this year or last year sometime they discovered that, no, it's a planet again. I was like, it always was. Thank you.
Right. First of all, it's been a joy to have you here. I definitely want to bring you back.
Please.
So many other topics and issues. I think there's so many things going on right now within our culture. On a national level, but within our community as women of color, I think so many things that you can bring back to share with the listeners and viewers. So I just want to say thank you so much for gracing us with your presence and your wisdom and your knowledge. So with that being said, Dr. Rowe, do you have maybe a nugget or maybe 3 points or a close, 3 points and a close, a takeaway? Churchy. Takeaways, just to kind of wrap up the conversation, or just to give the listeners to think about until you come back next time.
Sure. You want to make impact this year. You want to have influence. Everybody's throwing around the word influence, and you want to make income. In order for those 3 things to happen, my friend, you have to embrace the fact that your visibility is power. You have to understand that there's power in you. You are the content. You are the product. And when you embrace that, you will start to make the impact, influence, and the income that you desire. You have to show up. Starts with you.
I love it. And for those that would like to reach out with you or connect with you on social media and get your book, where can they do that?
Listen, make sure to check me out all across social media as The Rose Show Live. That's TheRosholive. And then you can also get our book, Visibility is Power, available right now on Amazon and any major book retailer.
Thank you so much. And everyone, thank you for tuning in. This is your host, Camille Essick, and this is the Speaker Podcast, the podcast where innovators and creators connect. Until next time, thank you for watching. Good night. Bye-bye.